Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I am quilting on my vintage block quilt again. And this block is called Swallows in the Window, and you can see a video on how I sewed that block together on the channel, as well as that video will also have a link to the pattern if you want to make this block. I started out quilting this one by stitching in the ditch around the center square, and that just helps stabilize it for any other quilting I want to put in it. And I don't do that on every block, but this one had a very large center piece on it. I believe that's an 8.5 inch block, or an 8-inch finished block. So I wanted to stitch in the ditch around that. And then I also am stitching in the ditch around the triangles that surround it, because that's another large area, and that just helps give the block a little more definition when the quilting is all done, as well as help stabilize it. So I'm using my longer ruler. It's a 12-inch ruler, and it's about 3 inches wide, and it has markings on two of the long sides. One is for a 3-inch or a 3/4 inch hopping foot. The other side is for a 1/2 inch hopping foot, and I am using the 1/2 inch marked side because I have a 1/2 inch hopping foot. So it has lines on there that helps you when you want to distance your straight line quilting. So you can go up to like an inch apart with this ruler. And this ruler is by Rob's Rulers, and I don't think it is available anymore, but there are a lot of rulers on the market that will have markings on them for you, so you can search for one of those. And right here I decided to do continuous curve in the diamond shapes here, and you could put anything in these you want. I just wanted to do a little more of an outline type quilting without using a ruler, so I decided to do continuous curve. So I am in automatic mode here, and that means it's stitch regulated, so I can take my time and not have to worry about keeping up with the machine at this point. So I'm going to go around and do each one of those diamond shape areas and just do the continuous curve. So in this area I think you can see it a little better because it's a little closer to the camera, but it's just a little curve around each one of the seams there, and that helps give those shapes a little definition, and it's just easier to do than using a ruler to do some ruler work. And it gives the curve adds a little something extra to the piecing, so I like to do that on shapes like this. Now when I am quilting a quilt, I don't always have everything all planned out ahead of time. In fact, most of the time I don't know what I'm going to do until I have the quilt on the machine. And that's just me. That's just how I like to do it. So on this one I decided I wanted to do cross hatch, and for some reason I got started before I had any kind of markings on there. So I did one line of quilting from corner to corner, and then pulled out my stencil here to mark the edges so that I could do 1 inch wide cross hatching on it. So I'm just lining this up along with the edges of the block, and then I'm just marking right at the edge of the block where each 1 inch mark is. Now you can just use a ruler for this, you don't have to use a stencil, but I thought this would be a little bit faster for me. So I'm just going to mark this all the way around that piece, and so it'll be all marked in 1 inch increments, and then I can do the cross hatching. And the pen I was using is an air soluble marker, so I don't have to go back and erase those marks on there. They'll disappear over time. In fact, on this project, with the color of the orangish yellow color there and the purple pen, they kind of neutralized each other, and they were a little bit difficult to see. So every once in a while I had to search really closely to find those marks. And that just happens sometimes, and that's just a combination of the color of the pen and the color of the fabric. So I may have done better. Things may have run smoother if I had just marked all the lines on there, but I wasn't wanting to do that at that time. So I am just going from one side to the other and just quilting straight lines there and traveling by stitching in the ditch on the block there. Now for those triangles surrounding the center of the block, I decided I wanted to do some feathers. So I'm just going to start in one corner and work my way around. Now these feathers are just basic formal feathers. There's nothing fancy about them. And I'm going to make them so that they all point towards the outer corner. And for me, that just helps the feathers fit in a triangular shape a little bit better. So I'm just using the long edge of the triangle as the spine, and then just quilting the feathers in. And once again, I am in stitch regulated mode here. Now you can do these without a stitch regulator if you want to. It's just for me, there are days when I just don't want to have to deal with the stress of keeping up with the machine, because normally I will quilt fairly fast, so I have my machine set pretty high on the speed when I'm quilting. So sometimes the machine has to keep up with me, or I have to keep up with the machine, and some days I just don't want to have to mess with that. So if I put it in stitch regulated mode, then the machine is going to quilt at my speed, so I don't have to worry about it. But I think those feathers just add a nice touch in the block overall, because the patterns in the fabric are pretty busy, and so the quilting you put in those, the quilting that I put in those really doesn't show up that much, other than when you have the light shining from the side and then you can see the texture. But other than that, the fabrics are just really too busy to show a lot of fancy quilting. So I preserve or reserve my feathers for areas that are in a solid color fabric, or a fabric that reads as a solid, and that way the amount of work that goes into making a feather design is worth it because it shows. And I'm still using that cream cream colored thread in that section, even though it's a green fabric, because it just blends in. It doesn't glare. It doesn't show up that much. And then for the background, I decided to do an outline stitch all the way around the block, using a little ruler here and just outlining each of the pieces around the block. Now I'm working on the single lily block, and I started out by stitching in the ditch around the stem and the leaves, and I'm using a couple of different rulers. These are rulers that have a couple of different curves in them so that you can use them to help you get around applique. And you don't need these kind of rulers. You can just use a circular ruler that you have, or you can do it freehand. They're not necessary to do this, but I have them and they do come in handy, so I go ahead and use those when I need to stitch around applique pieces, especially those with curves on them. So I'm just getting as close to the applique as I can without stitching on it, and using the same thread. It's that cream colored Omni thread. It's a 40 weight, and just taking my time getting around these applique shapes. For these green diamond shapes, I decided to quilt in a leaf shape. So I'm just following pretty much the shape of the diamond there, trying just to fill the space and making sure I have a little vein in the center there, and that just all helps fill up space there. So I'm not wanting to do anything really complicated in this block, just something to make it look pretty. For the blue pieces, I'm just doing a continuous curve and just doing that freehand. And of course you can use a ruler for that if you want to. You can just use a circle ruler or anything with a curve on it if you like that kind of help when you're doing continuous curve. And continuous curve goes pretty quickly, so it's something nice to do. And then in the center of that, I added a swirl for each one of the light blue pieces there, the ones with the polka dots in it. And then in the darker blue, I'm putting in a little cabbage rose. So it's just like a hook with a couple of petals on the end. And then when I'm going up into the point of those triangles, just quilting a swirl in there just to copy what I have already done in the lighter blue pieces. So that is all done, and now I need to move on. So I decided to do some outline quilting around the petals here around the leaves, the applique leaves. So I'm back to using my curved ruler, my applique ruler, and just using that to follow the shapes, and then using a straight edge on the areas that aren't curved. Now for inside the applique leaves, I decided to put in the veins. So this is just some straight line quilting, and I'm just doing it freehand here. So it's very simple, just the middle vein and then a couple that branch off, and I just backtrack over what I've already quilted to get to the next point. For the background quilting, I started off by doing another outline stitch 1/4 inch away from all of the pieces, and just carried that all the way around that flower. I felt like the background needed some more quilting in it, so I decided to go ahead and carry on the flower motif and add a little cabbage rose in some of the areas, and then a little swirl to help fill things in. So I carried this around the entire background of the block. for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.